All right, good morning, everyone. Thanks for your coming. So before I start to discuss today's new material, let's just quickly say something about the exam. So exam, I just look at the statistics. So I think everyone did a good job. So the average is around 75%. So on average, takes the students less than 40 minutes to finish, right? So that's a good sign. So and given the average, it seems like so we are doing well. So that's good. That's encouraging. However, I want to warn you, the exam one or the midterm one is only for the review, right? So that's for microeconomics. Starting from today, so we will discuss macroeconomics. So the macroeconomics in general is a little bit abstract and it's a little bit difficult compared to microeconomics. So if we did well in the first midterm, doesn't mean so we can do as well as in the second one if you don't put enough effort. So that's the things I want to emphasize. But apparently, if you keep the good work, you will be doing great, right? So this is the things I want to emphasize. And the other things I want to say is there are few students who cannot make to the exam due to some emergency. If that's the case, contact me as soon as possible. So we can arrange your makeup exam. So I will do my best to accommodate you. Maybe over the weekend, so it works better for everyone. All right. So if you are one of the persons who cannot make the exam, so just contact me as soon as possible. This is the second thing I want to say. And then the third thing is so some students may feel discouraged by the first midterm score. And so I want to say, don't feel too bad. So this probably just take time for you to adjust with my class. And on top of that, so I want to say, so I decided to give you some extra bonus point opportunity. So I will give you a little bit details during our break, because remember, every day so we have like short break. So I will give you the details how we are going to take this extra credit opportunity during the break. And later on, I will send everyone an email to explain that. So this is on top of the pub quiz we already have, right? So just keep in mind, so the pub quiz is essentially a extra credit, because as long as you come to the class, you should, I mean, when I say come to class, just come to Zoom. So that should be very, very easy to get the full credit for the pub quiz. So in that sense, I treat that as extra bonus point. All right. Okay. So if there's no question for me, so now I want to move to the new chapter. All right. So this is a chapter that gives you a big picture of macroeconomics, give you an introduction. Right. For this part of the lecture, so I will go fairly quick. The reason why I'm going to go fairly quick is because this is just a review. This is just overview what we are going to discuss for the rest of the semester, right? And then this just give you a flavor. What does macroeconomics look like? All right. So if you cannot fully digest the stuff we discussed today, do not worry. We have the rest of the semester to explain them in details one by one. All right. Okay, but however, you need to pay attention, because this is just going to give you an introduction. All right, so that's going to link to what we are going to discuss later. Right. So in this is going to be the roadmap of this chapter. So we are going to talk about the difference between macroeconomics and microeconomics. This is the first important point. And then so we're going to look at a business cycle, understand what is business cycle and how we are going to measure a business cycle. So for example, right now we are in a recession, okay? And then so we are going to see so how we are going to do that, okay? So next one, we are going to look at economic growth, okay? And then so next one, so we're going to look at inflation and deflation. And finally, we're going to look at open economic macroeconomics. Right. So I'm going to skip this one, this short discussion. Now just look at the origin of macroeconomics. So we have briefly talked about that in the introduction for this class. So the macroeconomics was born during the time of Great Depression. That was 1930s. Right. So at that time, so the U.S. economy and pretty much the world economy suffers the worst blowout in human history, right? And so at that point, microeconomics was well developed, like the stuff we have reviewed so far. Even back then, were understood. Okay? And one implication from microeconomics was, so we should let the market to clear everything. We should let the invisible hands to do the magic work, right? Back then, so we use microeconomics principle to guide the macroeconomics. Okay, so even though we do not know what's macroeconomics yet, but basically we just focus on microeconomics to guide how we how we organize our macroeconomy. Right. Okay, and just give you a short history. So Hoover, so he was a president during the time of Great Depression. And so when he was a president, or at that point of time, so most economists believe microeconomics and believe invisible hand and believe the market should solve all the problems. And then so naturally, so what they did is, so they just leave the economy alone, let the economy to recover. And even worse, so Hoover's administration decided, so we must balance the budget. Let me write down, we must balance the budget. Okay. So what that means, so the government needs to tighten the belt. The government needs trying to do their best to get extra tax revenue so that they can meet the budget. Okay, so this is what Hoover administration did. But apparently, so this balance the budget makes things worse, because in a recession, in order to balance the budget, they must raise tax, they must reduce government spending. As we are going to see later, those two are very counterproductive, because raise the tax, you are going to discourage investment, you are going to discourage work. And reduce government spending, you're going to reduce the aggregate demand. So both are going to make the problem even worse, right? But unfortunately, in 1930 or before the birth of macroeconomics, so we did not understand that. So that's why so we have this policy failure. Okay. And here just run through a few pictures, just highlights the damage of the Great Depression has caused to the macroeconomy. Right. So now I'm going to explain to you the difference between micro and macroeconomics. Right. Let's use a few examples. So example number one, should I go to business school or take a job right now? So this is a typical micro question, because this is a question regarding to individual decision, right? And when you do such, when you make such decision, so we are going to use the principle we reviewed, right? So you think about in the margin, and you think about trade-off, you think about opportunity cost, right? And conversely, or there's a comparable macro questions. So how many people are employed in the economy as a whole this year, right? Now, instead of look at an individual, we look at the population. We look at the total number of people employed in the economy. And this is important. This is important in the sense that's going to help us to understand the health of the economy. Health of the economy, right? And then, so once we understand the health of the economy, so we can prescribe appropriate economic policy or macroeconomic policy. All right, so this is the first example. Now, go to the third example, this one. So a micro question may ask, what determines the cost to a university or a college of offering a new course? Okay, think about, think about the CBA. So we decide to offer a new course or new program, right? And then, so what's their decision? How they make their decision? So essentially, their decision is going to be based on the cost and the benefit, right? And to think about in the margin, right? We think about opportunity cost, like the first question we have. On the other hand, so a macro question can be, what determines overall level of price in the economy as a whole? Again, so here we are not talking about a particular industry. We are not talking about a particular goods. We are not talking about a particular sector. And we just talk about overall price. And like the first question we look at here, so this just gives us an indicator regarding the health of the economy. And then to understand the health of the economy or the well-being of the economy, and then we can have proper justification regarding to the economic policy we should have or the direction we should have. Right? So I'm going to stop here for the comparison. Right? So in general, microeconomic question is regarding to individual business, individual agent, individual workers, how they make a decision. And the macroeconomic question, you can simply put is aggregate. But the later slides show you, so it's more than simple summation. Okay? It's more than simple summation, let me emphasize. Okay? And here, just give you an example, why macro is not a simple summation. Okay? So this example is called paradox of thrifty. So paradox means something contradictory or something against your conventional wisdom, right? Okay, think about when family and business are worried about the possibility of economic hard time, like we are right now, right? So because the coronavirus creates some damage to the economy, and the people lost their job, or they're worried about they are going to lose their job, right? If that is the case, what they can do at the individual level, so it is optimal for them to cut their spending. And why this is optimal? It's because by cutting spending, and then so you can save for the potential downturn that's going to hit you. You're going to save for the potential unemployment you may suffer, right? So this is optimal from individual point of view. You become thrifty, okay? You spend less, you save more. But however, just imagine if everybody do the same things. Everyone stay at home, do not dine out, do not go to the mall to shopping. And then, so this original worry about the hard time is going to realize. Because when we started, okay, so I was worried about, so I may lose my job, right? So I was worried about, so my salary is going to get cut. Now I decide to reduce my spending. If I reduce my spending, and then the business won't have enough customers, and the business must to tighten. If the business tighten, and then so they must cut their spending, and then so they start to lay off workers. So you see, so originally it was a worry, now it becomes realized. This example just tells you from individual point of view, it is optimal. But in aggregate level, this is not, right? So in other words, macroeconomics is more than simple summation of microeconomics. Okay. Here just I kind of summarize how macroeconomics evolves. Okay? Before 1930, which is the time period of Great Depression, the conventional wisdom believed the economy can self-regulate itself. Just remind yourself the invisible hand to talk about, or if you like, and draw a graph like we discussed earlier. So this is demand, this is supply, right? So we talk about if the price is too high, and then there's force push down the price. If the price is too low, there's force to push up the price, right? And eventually we are going to settle here, right? Or in other words, everyone believes so the economy can self-regulate itself. Okay? But it turns out, as I'm going to show you later, it turns out, yes, it can, but this adjustment process can be lengthy, can be painful. Okay? And actually, during this adjustment period, the government or we as a society, we can do something to help the economy to recover faster. Right? So that's the foundation of Keynesian economics. And particularly Keynesian economics says or believe economic slumps are caused by inadequate spending, and they can be mitigated by government intervention. But that's what we need to explain. So how and why? I mean, how the government can mitigate and why we should allow the government to mitigate, right? Right, so here just give you a sense, like show you the data. So to what extent the government intervention can help to mitigate. So this is after June of 1929. So this is a Great Depression. And here where we start is the onset of the recession or onset of the shock to the economy. This is after, so this is the length, the months after the starting point of the shock, right? We look at two events. One is the Great Depression. The other is Great Recession. That is 2007 and 2008 financial crisis, right? And what we see on the vertical line is world industrial output. Okay, essentially just tells you how economy behave in terms of output, right? And we normalize the starting point as 100. And clearly you can see the adjustment process is, it can be extremely lengthy and very painful. Look at 1928, after 1928. So the output, world output declined, at the worst day declined by over 30%. Okay? And so this is after 4 or 5 years, so we still has not recovered yet. Actually, it took like 10 years for the economy to recover. Now, if we look at 2008, this was considered the worst recession after World War II. Sorry, it's even worse than. So this was considered the worst after Great Depression, right? But now you can see it pick up fairly quick. So basically we recovered to the pre-crisis level in less than 3 years. Okay? In the worst days, we lost 10%. This is compared with 30%, right? And what is slight difference? The difference is we have better economic policy. Let's just give you an example. So the government can and should do something to help the economy. Right. So now here's, I'm going to quote a famous saying by John Maynard Keynes, who was the founder of modern macroeconomics. He said, here, let me highlight, in the long run, we are all dead. Okay. So what that means, yes, for sure. So in reality, so we are all dead in the long run. But literally what he says is, so in the long run, the economy is going to recover, right? So here probably take 10 years, right? But then, so his point is, if we just hand off, let the economy to self-regulate, yes, we can recover to our original level, but it's too painful, too costly. Okay, so we may not able to wait, or we may not have the luxury to wait until then. So instead of hands off and wait, maybe we can do something. That is this point, to intervene, to mitigate. Right. Right. So now let's look at business cycle. Right. So what is business cycle? Right. So in terms of fighting the business cycle, typically the government has two types of policy. One is called monetary policy. So we will have one chapter to discuss monetary policy toward the end of the semester. But for now, what you need to know is to understand what is monetary policy. You do not need to know the details, just have an idea of what is monetary policy. Monetary policy, it just uses changes in the quantity of money to affect interest rate and affect overall spending. So this is monetary policy. Now, contrary to monetary policy, the government can also use fiscal policy. So the goal of fiscal policy is the same as monetary policy. They are trying to affect overall spending. Okay? But the tool is different. Fiscal policy is going to change taxes. It's going to change government spending. Right? So this is compared with changing the quantity of money and interest rate. Right? So different administration, so they may prefer different policy, as we are going to see later. So different policy has their pros and cons. Okay. Now, before I show you how we understand or how we identify business cycle, let's show you a few images of depression. This is in 1930. This happened in the United States. Right. All right. So now let's just look at the actual data so that we can define business cycle. Right. What we have here on the left-hand side is from 1985 to 2014. Okay. So we look at two time series or two data. One is industrial production index, essentially to tell us how much we can produce. Okay, so in industrial section. The other is private sector employment, just show us how many are working, right? All right, so clearly there are two things you can see from this graph, probably like three. Number one, these two attract each other. Right? They track each other, it's also obvious, because the more people you work and the more you can produce, right? This is number one. Number two, overall, they trend up, trending up, right? So this actually reflects to economic growth, as we are going to discuss shortly after. And then number three, yes, they trending off, but over time, they fluctuate. There's a fluctuation, right? So sometimes goes up, sometimes goes down, right? Like sometimes goes down, okay? Another way to look at the same data on the left-hand side is look at percentage change from year earlier. And then so if we look at percentage change from year earlier, and then so we are going to see the fluctuation more clear. Right? So then so you can see, so let's say for example, look at employment. It's fluctuates, sometimes above trend, like compared to previous year, sometimes below. Right? So like this below. Okay? So this is actual data. Now given this actual data, so we can define business cycle. Right? So what is business cycle? business cycle is a short-run alternation between recession and expansion. But then, so what is recession? Recession is defined as period of economic downturn when output and employment are falling. On the other hand, so we may experience expansion. And then the expansion just says we are in economic upturn when output and employment are rising. Okay? And then put them together. Business cycle just says sometimes the economy is when it goes down, sometimes the economy goes up. And the economy is alternating between trending down and trending up. Okay, so this is a business cycle. Now, we can use an abstract curve to summarize what the actual data looks like, right? So this is just a hypothetical curve, but this curve describes the actual data fairly consistent. Like let's just go back to the previous one. Okay? So you have upturn, downturn, upturn, downturn, upturn, downturn, right? So alternate. Okay, and then so in this one, we just use a stylized curve to show you how the actual business cycle may look like and how we define each phase of the business cycle. Overall, this fluctuation is called business cycle. Right? And then so we have downturn, we call recession, because this go down. And then so we have expansion, because this is increasing. And then so we have another recession, go down. And then so we have another expansion, go up. Right? And I also want to emphasize, so towards the peak of the expansion, you start to enter the recession. Toward the trough of the recession, you see light of expansion, right? And here we call the peak, here we call the trough. Now, peak, you start to exhaust your oxygen or exhaust your fuel and start to slow down. Once you're towards the end of the trough, you start to see the light in the tunnel, at the end of the tunnel, right? And then so it starts to see the fluctuation, right? Okay, so you may wonder, so why we care about recession? Recession, the most important effect of recession is its ability for worker to limit the worker's ability to find a job and hold jobs. Okay? If the worker has lower ability to find jobs during recession, or they have hard time to hold their job, so that is going to create pain to the worker and their family. Okay? So this background picture tells all. So people line up for free soups or food, right? Because they have hard time to find a job. They do not have financial stability, right? Right, so here just show you the most recent business cycle, starting from 1988 to 2014. And then here we just look at unemployment rate, right? Again, during recession, like here, here, and here, unemployment rate went up. Okay, you can imagine, so during those time period, the output will decline. Okay? And also, I want to emphasize the most recent financial crisis. So we observe a sharp spike in unemployment rate. This was the worst since Great Depression, right? And this fluctuation caused lots of damage to the economy. Because let's use 2008-2009 financial crisis example. So the recession leads to 10%, look at here, this is 10%. 10% of American workers lost their job. Okay? So that's going to create lots of pain to the society, right? So that's why we need cares. And then, so what we can do, so the government policy should or able to reduce the pain by limit the unemployment rate, or they may can do something to help those who lost their job. Okay, so those are the things we will discuss toward the end of the semester. But right after this semester, right after this slide, the first thing we need to study is how we can come up and measure, like we observed here. All right. Okay, so I'm going to show you a short video, and then so we have a few minutes break. All right. Okay, so let me just pause and then switch to my laptop.